It's time to review the 2019 iMac 5K, and that includes the high-end i9 model. Welcome everyone, it is Andrew here for Apple Insider. Apple updated the iMac line for 2019, introducing new 21.5-inch 4K models, as well as the 27-inch iMac 5K. There are a few different ones in there, and in this review, we're going to be looking at both the base model iMac 5K and the high-end spec'd out i9 version with those Vega graphics. That should help you gauge performance across the entire line and to pick the best iMac 5K that is right for you. So let's go ahead and dive into the details of what sets the 2019 iMac apart. As we mentioned, it sticks with the same 2012 design that we've seen for years now. There's nothing really wrong with it, and honestly, it still looks pretty fantastic for being this old. Just shows how ahead of the game Apple was when they introduced this machine. There are certain aspects, however, that are starting to show their age. For instance, these giant bezels around the edges, and those hefty chins along the bottom. Both of those could be slimmed up here in 2019, kind of like the MacBook Pro line that definitely had larger bezels before they were slimmed down. Along the back we have the I/O, including Gigabit Ethernet, an SD card slot, 4 USB-A, and 2 Thunderbolt 3. In 2019, we don't need those USB-A really as much. We'd prefer all USB-C and Thunderbolt 3, but of course that makes it difficult for Apple to decide for Thunderbolt 3 or some USB-C. It just gets kind of confusing, and for a mass market machine, there's still people who want those USB-A ports. There's still a Kensington lock slot at the bottom too, so you can tether this to your desk, and there is a RAM door so you can get in there and swap out the RAM yourself, which we advise because companies like OWC offer cheaper RAM and at higher capacities than Apple is even offering, up to 128 gigs. Let's go ahead and check out the performance, starting with that base model. On Geekbench, we got 5335 on the single core and 20919 on the multi-core. Comparatively, when we look at the 2017 27-inch base iMac, that's a 32% gain on the multi-core. If we look at the highest end top of the line 2017 iMac, the gain is only about 6%. On the Cinebench R20 test, we got a 2383, and the Unigine Heaven benchmark, we got an 1104 with an FPS of 43.8. Blackmagic speed test garnered an 87.6.9 on the write and a 1449.9 on the read. To boost those even further, you can go from this Fusion drive that's built in to an SSD and then pick up some Thunderbolt 3 external storage. So that's the base model, definitely some substantial gains over the previous generation. But now let's go ahead and look at that i9 model with those Radeon Pro Vega 48 graphics and 8 gigs of GDDR5 VRAM. So this is going to be a much more impressive unit when you're looking at gains of the last generation. We looked at that base model compared to the base and the high end. This is the new high end, and there's definitely some more improvements than we saw with the previous one. Kicking things off, let's jump into Geekbench 4 once more, and we have that 6313 on single core and 32954 on multi. Those are huge numbers, and in fact, the multi score is just below the base iMac Pro, and the single core actually bests the iMac Pro. So this machine, which comes in a couple grand less than an iMac Pro, is actually getting better numbers on that single core and almost the same on the multi-core. So really encouraging results with that 8-core Intel i9 processor. Even comparing it to that base iMac 5K we just looked at, the multi-core score is almost 13,000 points higher. These are some great numbers, and if you want performance, this is the machine, the configuration to go with. Moving over to Cinebench R20, we ran this test again, but especially with that beefier processor, we were really interested in the thermal limitations of this machine. I mean, this is a 2012 design, and these are much faster and hotter processors, so we were really interested to see if this was going to be limited by the actual build of the machine, and luckily, no, that was not the case. We did not have the actual frequency, the speed of the processor dip below the advertised speed, so this was able to keep that performance up there even as the thing ran hot as we ran this test back to back to back to back. So we have no limitations like we saw with the MacBook Pros. We then ran, of course, the Unigine Heaven benchmark on that Radeon Pro Vega 48 graphics, and again we did see a substantial boost over what we saw on that base model. There's a huge difference in graphics between the two. Though if you're doing any video work whatsoever, there is no T2 processor, which helps with hardware video encoding, so that was a bit of a bummer. It also lacks the Siri functionality that you can trigger with your voice. As far as Unigine Heaven goes, we got an FPS of 68.7 and 1730 for the score, so really nice scores here. This is a gaming benchmark, so a lot of it's not going to apply, but it is a good base for that graphic card. Unlike the iMac 4K, where we really struggled to get the fans to kick in, we did get them to power on the iMac 5K several times as we were putting it through its paces. The fans here aren't particularly loud, but they are noticeable in a small room. It's something that you really don't want to have to deal with, but they are there. It's not like a tower machine where you can stick below your desk and not have to worry about it. It is right there in front of you. Luckily, the speakers here are still top notch. They're not quite as powerful as the iMac Pro, but for the vast majority of people, these are going to be more than fine with the room filling sound that can only get beat by a dedicated set of speakers that you're probably not going to have to put on your desk. This isn't all-in-one, so it is nice just to keep it this way and not have to tack on a bunch of accessories to make up for its shortcomings. While once more, the iMac looks the same as its 2012 counterpart, it's not at all. The display is beautiful, the speakers are powerful, and the internals here are up to date and ready for 2019 with excellent performance, including substantial gains over the previous generation, and fall just slightly below the iMac Pro. This means that if you're looking for a big, beautiful Apple display and want a capable computer to pair with it, you have one. Whether you're looking at the base model that still offers pretty solid performance, or if you want to max everything out with an i9 processor and those Radeon Pro graphics. Let us know down below in the comments which ones you prefer and if you happen to pick one up. Hey everyone, did you guys like that video? Be sure to click on that like button so we can create content that we know that you guys want to see. And follow Apple Insider on all social media channels. If you want the best prices on any Apple gear, check out the Apple Insider Price Guide that is updated daily. And until next time, we'll see you later.